Welcome to the Empower Hour with Becoming Truly Liberated. We come to you every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central on Inspiration for Life online radio to encourage and support women, to take some time together to build a community and create a safe place to ponder who we are, what we're created for, and to celebrate each other during a time when division is an all-time high around the world. We want you to know that you are valuable in this world and to this world. I'm your host, Janet Taylor, founder of Becoming Truly Liberated and Become. I'm really excited to create this 7th week of our relaunch. I continue to value and appreciate the support of so many as I continue to learn about creating a weekly podcast with guests. Always a huge thank you to Rita Hernandez with Inspiration for Life, not only as the hosting platform, but also as the producer for piecing together all these individual videos to make one long video and the podcast. It's really beyond my knowledge right now, so I am unbelievably grateful for that skill. So this past weekend, I had the honor to attend the first Texas PodCon in San Antonio, Texas. I am on information overload, but I cannot wait to begin to implement all that I learned and to begin using my new mic that I won. But for now, our production schedule is not weeks ahead, which apparently it should be, but still day of, sometimes even moments before. So I'm finishing this series as I started, by doing it imperfectly, but getting it done. The Lies Women Believe series has been incredibly educational and impactful, not only for me, but for a lot of people who reach out to me. I appreciate beyond words all the guests who took the time to be interviewed and to share the podcast as we continue to want to reach out to more women and men with this message about becoming truly liberated. So tonight's show includes 4 mini interviews and a full-length interview from women and one man who wanted to share their aha moments about lies they had believed in the past. I know that many of us will relate with Nicky in her full interview as she talks about always believing that being sensitive and emotional made her inferior, and how she came to realize that it's actually her superpower. Before her interview, you'll hear from Janie Dress, Christiana and Astra Rodriguez, who've overcome feelings of being objectified, feelings that they didn't deserve to be happy because they had made mistakes growing up, and also how women always put themselves last when it comes to taking care of ourselves. You'll also hear from one man, Gilbert Granado. He speaks about his value of women, their strength as leaders, and how we can all learn from each other to really create a better harmony in this world. I love the messages I'm getting from not only the interviewees, but from listeners all over the world. And they've been asking about continuing with these conversations. They appreciate that they have an outlet for people to share their powerful and empowering stories. So if you're listening on Inspiration for Life Radio, I want to also invite you to join the conversation later in the discussion group on our Facebook page, Becoming Truly Liberated. And as always, please pray for our guests as they continue their journey to be truly liberated and all that means to them, to their families, and to their community. Let's take a listen.
This interview is brought to you by GoX Apparel. You make a difference in the lives of children and families around the world every time you put on a GoX tee. Purchase with purpose. That matters.
In this section, you'll hear 4 short interviews with Janie Dress, Christiana, Astra Rodriguez, and Gilbert Granado as I spoke to them about their aha moments around lies they believed about women. Each interview is only a few minutes long. Thanks for listening. Okay. So we're talking, I'm putting her on the spot. This is Janie Dress with the, tell me.
Rise Above TV.
Rise Above TV.
The mindfulness coach.
I didn't know which one you were, so you're both. Okay, so here
Creator.
she is.
Creator Rise Above TV.
And the question is the biggest lie you have believed as a woman and your aha moment. Go.
That I was an object. I've been objectified in a lot of ways from a very early age. through personal experiences from like trauma stuff, but also just collective societal cultural ideologies and narratives about what it means to be a woman. And I didn't realize how embedded that was into my psyche. And so there's nothing wrong with the feminine side of the human being, but that's a very submissive type of energy. And as a woman, I've had to take back my autonomy and my sovereignty and find my voice and not feel guilty because I've been condemned a lot of times for when I have used my voice, whether it be to share an idea or maybe speak up and try to create a healthy boundary. There's a lot of shame around that. Around the body, around a lot of things. So I think in the last couple of years, it's taken me into my 40s to recognize all of this and then course correct it accordingly through spiritual work, through mental work, and also leading, because here I'm trying to build something and lead people, and that's a masculine trait, and so I have to feel comfortable in my masculinity. And when I'm asking somebody to do something, not doing it in sort of this like kind of soft, asking for permission. I need to feel comfortable stating what I need and want without feeling like I need to like cushion it too much. Does that make sense? I don't know. I said a lot of things, and I don't know if it all sort of tied together.
Yes.
But I'm not an object. I have a voice. I have ideas. I am a person. I'm a whole person. Even though I'm a woman, I'm strong. It's okay to be strong and gentle. So it's finding that balance.
I love you, Janie Dress. So I met Christiana at the Texas PodCon conference in San Antonio, and she has agreed to do a quick little interview of her lies that she's believed or has believed or had believed as a young person or as an adult, and her aha moment. Go.
Thank you, Janet. So there were actually two big lies that I used to believe very much, and the first one is that I did not deserve to be happy. And the second one was my opinion does not matter. How that actually ties in together is I felt that I didn't deserve to be happy because everything that I did growing up seemed to be in the way. It seemed to be my fault. If I wasn't around, maybe things would be easier for my parents, or if I didn't shut myself away and seem like I didn't want to make friends, then maybe things wouldn't be so hard for people to try and connect with me. And I felt like everything that was going wrong was because of me or because of something that I did that people were frustrated of. Why did you do it this way? We told you over and over again, do it like this and that bad thing won't happen, and it still did. So I thought that because I wasn't doing anything correctly, that it felt like nothing I did was right, that I didn't deserve to be happy because I made so many mistakes, and anytime that I got punished, I thought, okay, this is what I deserved, and it's gonna toughen me up and it's gonna make me better, but it only made me worse, and it made me realize that you don't deserve to be suffering. Nobody does. But what that tied into me having a fear that my opinion didn't matter, that it wasn't valid, was because it felt like what I knew and the knowledge that I had and the personality that I was, it didn't fit in with everybody that was around me. Nobody understood me. Nobody could understand why I was interested into cartooning and why I was so interested in singing, even though I wasn't like Selena's or that I wasn't like Christina Aguilera. And I felt that things that were interesting to me was not going to be interesting to anyone else, and that I would just come off as foolish. And so I was so shut in and afraid to express myself because I thought it would come off as childish and stupid, and what you're interested in isn't appropriate because it's not what everybody else in that you should match. And it made me realize, especially attending this podcast, that having your own voice and being able to openly express it is the most liberating feeling that you can have, because you're letting it off your chest. You're able to accept that this is you. Nobody else can be like you, and you shouldn't change yourself to be for anything else for anyone else, unless it's to be a better person. And that is the best thing that you should be able to make a change in, is how you can brighten yourself up and brighten up another person's life.
Absolutely. And you are valuable. You are valuable.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you. So we're here with Astra Rodriguez, and we've been talking about lies that women believe. And so she just started telling all this stuff. And so I asked her if I could video her, and she said yes. So here she goes. Start again. Tell me about that.
The general thing that I was working out with a friend of mine, Javier Polido, in fact, who was one of my friends that was talking to me about health, and we were looking into nutrition, and I started doing that. We're taking care of that, reached into it. And I reached out to some friends if they were interested in taking care of themselves. Would they follow a regimen? Would they follow a diet? Would they follow meal plans? And the biggest thing, the lies that women are being told, and we've been trained from little, whether it's culture or not, we're last. Our children are supposed to go first. Our home's supposed to go first. Our husband's supposed to go first. Everything else is first, and we are last because we are the caregivers. Where do we come and play? We were lied to all the time. That we were told, no, this is your position. And in the 50s, the same thing. It was always done. The women were at home, cooking, cleaning, everything. So it's been on and on and on for years and years and years that we are supposed to be last. We're being told that this is where it's supposed to go. So they don't have time to follow a meal plan. They don't have time to create that stuff. They don't have time to follow a diet. They don't have time to work out. We're sitting down at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night at the end of a business day. That's when we're sitting. And I noticed that. I was on before when I was going live on Facebook even. Yeah. And if you do that now, the women get on at 10 o'clock at night. You're like, right? Why are we on at 10:30 at night? Because that's when we're sitting. The kitchen's clean, the food's done, we put stuff away for school already, we've done this, we've set out the clothes, we've washed, we've done all this stuff. Now we're sitting down at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. That's when we're sitting down and saying, can I take a minute for myself? That's not fair.
So what changed now, and what needs to change?
What changed now for me was the fact that sitting down and learning more meal stuff, more food preparation. It took a guy to open up my eyes and tell me, hey, Esther, you need to do this, this, and I'm like, what? And why is it? And so I asked friends, and that's what it was. Just the fact that he said that was the main thing. A lot of women fell off because of that. And why was that? And I was just asking questions to friends and people that I knew why, and that's what it was. What needs to change is that we need to understand our health has to come up. We have to take care of ourselves, because all of that we're taking care of, who is going to take care of it if we're not healthy enough to do it ourselves?
Right. So like on the airplane, when they tell you when that mask come down, if you're with a child, who are you supposed to give the mask to first?
Your person next to you first.
No.
But you're not supposed to.
No.
You're supposed to put it on yourself first.
Yeah, because it's not going to help if you pass out.
Yes. And we do the opposite. We'll give it to our kid first. We'll give it to the next person first instead of ourselves. And you're right. In the airplane, what are we supposed to do? We are supposed to put it on ourselves first, and we don't.
Yeah.
Our first reaction is the opposite, and it needs to be re-emphasized, and re-emphasized. It's like we need to reprogram our brain to tell us, no, hold on, stop, take care of you. You have to do that. And a lot of that's been very hard for me in learning that myself too. You know, a lot of people know I have a daughter with disabilities. Lexi's got her issues. If it wasn't for my mother-in-law and my daughters even helping me in between I wouldn't be able to create a job or create a business. Mm-hmm. But we need to understand too, that has to stop. We have to change that. We have to change that within ourselves. So we have to change the culture and the venue of we as women need to learn to put ourselves first.
That's beautiful, and I thank you so much for your minutes, because this is what the podcast and the radio show is. It's called Becoming Truly Liberated, and this is what it's all about. Women empowering women to be what God has created us to be. Thank you, Astra. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Super excited to ask Gilbert Granados. Oh, look at him play with his glasses. The question that I've been asking women. Yeah. So I asked him, what lies have you believed about women, and what have been your aha moments?
The biggest thing is to understand is, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and as a woman, as a man, we have strengths and weaknesses, and the biggest lie is we don't have strengths and weaknesses. We all have that, and so I've had the amazing opportunity to be around empowering women, and women that I take orders from, women that I I am led by, and I'm led by many women. And I think the biggest thing is to understand it just is we all have strengths and weaknesses, the diversity of people. And the understanding is regardless of a man or a woman, is we all are led by somebody. We got to lead ourselves, and we lead others, and we lead leaders. And that's when we multiply our results. And when we understand that is we can be around each other and have harmony. And harmony is understanding our strengths and weaknesses, knowing where we got to go. And the big thing is we've been chatting for the last couple of 15 minutes, been listening to Empowering Women, Janie, and yourself as well, is seeing that, you know, we all know where we want to go. And sometimes we have an area with, like, we know what to do, but we don't do. And so just, as I say, is just play with a plan, is match your calendar and actions in alignment with your goals. And that keeps it so simple. And understanding is we all have strengths and weaknesses. So women, understanding is, yes, you're very empowering. I'm led all the time by my wife, by my daughter, by my grandkids. In the understanding is people are people. Just knowing who our people are and grow with them. So empowering women are very strong. You're leaders. You drive results every day. You're at the forefront of a family, always. You're at the forefront. And when a kid says, hey, I want to call, and who they want to talk to, they call the mom. They call the grandma. They don't call the dad. They don't call the grandpa first. They usually call the mom, and that is a woman. So God bless you guys. Have a great day. Play with a plan. Bye-bye.
Thanks for empowering us.
This interview is brought to you by Need to Know Smart Card. If you aren't reaching your customers on their cell phones, we need to talk. It's a customizable business card. You can change info like your specials or your programs in the palm of your hand. You can see mine at www.tljanitlyn.com. Need to know when they need to know. Thank you for joining us for another session of Becoming Truly Liberated Empower Hour. So excited tonight to meet with us for another discussion and story from a woman, another beautiful woman from across the pond. I'm super excited how our little show is going so global. I want to welcome and introduce to you Nicky Young. Nicky's a business consultant, an HR consultant, an executive coach, and a mom. I always love it when they say that because I don't know why, I think that's so cute. As an HR professional, she has worked in many industries from charity to financial services through media and travel. Her biggest passion in her fields of work is facilitating and helping people develop, and is now combining her experience, her skills, and her passion to help other working moms and moms-to-be navigate their maternity leave and beyond. So welcome, Nicky, to the Empower Hour. We've had some challenges connecting our schedules as busy people do. So I'm so glad that we did for this last episode. It's the last episode of this topic, Lies Women Believe. So Nicky, tell us just a little bit more about you.
Well, first of all, Janet, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'm glad we did get to connect.
Yes,
it's great to have this discussion. So tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm afraid I don't have the type of story that's, pulls at the heartstrings, or, I didn't grow up on the wrong side of the tracks or anything sort of particularly interesting. To be honest, I was blessed. I feel I was blessed to grow up in a loving home, just in the Midlands, here in the UK. And sort of, I struggled a little bit in terms of direction, I think, when I was growing up, because my parents were both teachers. And when I was growing up and seeing them do their jobs, I knew it was the only job I didn't want to do. It just seemed so tough and so thankless. And I'm not sure that that's got any better. So I went off to university, did a degree that qualified me for nothing specific, really. So I was still a little bit lost, even though I was sort of more qualified. So I went off traveling to Australia and around the world to broaden my horizons. And then when I came back, I took the path of a few different sales roles, which weren't particularly successful, but eventually I happened upon human resources, and that was where I found my professional home, if you like.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, my biggest passion is for helping and developing people. So Unfortunately, with the role of human resources, that's not what we always get to do. But as well as developing people through coaching, I've hugely enjoyed in some of my roles facilitating corporate culture workshops, for example, and also in some roles redefining corporate values within those companies. So I've loved that. As you said at the end of my introduction, I'm also a mum, blessed to be a mum to George, who's 3.5, keeps us on our toes. But I think that also means that I'm very acutely aware of the challenges facing, you know, not just women, but mums, and particularly working mums and mums in the workplace. So that's how I sort of happened to, as you say, sort of set up this business to help and support working mums with clarity and also confidence coaching as well, because I think that's super important to support women in that particular time.
Yes, and because you know, I raised 2 girls, I ended up homeschooling. I came out of the HR world, and so I ended up homeschooling both of them, one all the way through high school and the other one to high school. And I kind of lost my identity a little bit, even though I had done a little bit of consulting and done, you know, tried to keep up with what was happening. A lot of laws changed in the U.S. during that time, and I actually had just left. When I first left, we had just passed the FMLA. For us, it's called the Family Medical Leave Act. And we had passed it. I don't know if this is how your government works, but this is how our government works. We pass a bill, it becomes a law, and then we write it. And so us as HR professionals trying to implement a law that had no guts. It's like, well, great idea.
Yeah. Now what
do we do? What do we do with that now?
Yeah.
And so I was right as that. And so I tried to keep up with all that because it, you know, it was an important piece, obviously, for me as a woman, just being in that, having young kids and doing that. And so really haven't done too much more. We really haven't as the U.S. So I'm excited to hear what's happening or, you know, or what you're going to make happen in the UK. So that's awesome. So our topic for the last 7 weeks, or the last 6 weeks, this will be the last week, is lies women believe. And so is that tied into the things that you're passionate about, or is there another lie that you wanted to talk about?
Well, there's a few, I think. So the topic, I think, is fascinating because I'm not sure it's something that we necessarily recognise on a you know, constant basis, and it really got me thinking. And one of the lies, and this isn't particularly one that I'm going to focus on, but it really raised it to me, is the lie that I think all little girls, certainly of my generation and probably above, have been brought up with, is the lie of the fairy tale. You know, firstly, that all us girls are and women are damsels in distress. Secondly, that we wait for our Prince Charming to come along and rescue us. And thirdly, that there's a happily ever after, and everything, you know, just sort of falls into place and we're happy forever after, you know, the difficult part or whatever it is. So, you know, I think from that perspective, I was lucky enough to meet my lovely husband in my mid-30s. But, you know, there was a while when I was wondering if it would happen, and it got me to thinking, well, really, I could have been making myself happy in different ways instead of just waiting for this sort of Prince Charming. Now, I do think it's changing a little bit these days. I was with my niece last weekend, who's 7, and you know, I think the role models that the girls have these days are very different. So in the retelling of the fairy tales, they've got much stronger lead female characters, which I think is, you know, super positive. But that was one of the things that I reflected on. And it made me realise that I think a lot of the lies that we hear, we don't even recognise as it being a lie. I think that's really fascinating. But the particular lie that I think is especially pertinent to me personally and who I am is about sensitivity and emotion, and essentially the lie that makes people inferior. And I would assume that is particularly pertinent for women. So in terms of how that has impacted me, growing up, I was always a very empathetic and sensitive person. And I have been known to sort of wear my heart on my sleeve, if you like. And, you know, I can take things personally sometimes in terms of feedback. Sometimes it doesn't sit that well with me. It takes me a while to process that. But also, on the other hand, empathy has helped me hugely. Particularly, I think my friends and my family really appreciate those traits in me because it serves to make me a good listener. I always want to help people. I get the feedback that I give good advice to my friends and family, and presumably in the workplace as well, I give good advice. And it's something I get, I think, probably largely from my mum and my grandmother before her. It's something that they've kind of passed down. But in the workplace, interestingly, I've been told on a number of occasions by different people, mostly my managers and mostly men, that I'm too sensitive or emotional to be effective in the workplace. And, I believed it for such a long time. And I think it meant that I tried to stop myself and correct it, if you like, to stop myself from being emotional in work situations or about work situations, and essentially try and fit into a mold and become somebody that isn't, it's not me. So it took me a long while throughout my professional career of sort of believing this and trying to, change who I am professionally, or become a professional persona, I suppose, as opposed to who I really am. And, it took me a long while to realize that actually my sensitivity and depth of emotion are strengths. And some people are uncomfortable with it. My personal belief is that that's usually because they're uncomfortable with their own feelings and emotions, and therefore they're very uncomfortable with mine. If they can't process their own, then they certainly can't take on mine as well. But there was a particular moment where that all changed for me. As I mentioned before, working in HR, we don't always get the most fun jobs to do. And in one of my roles, probably about 7 years ago, it must have been, unfortunately, I was involved in a large number of employees being made redundant. And I was consulting with a lot of those employees, and there was one particular lady who was really struggling with the outcome of these conversations. And, trying to use my empathy, I said to her, I know it's difficult. I've been made redundant before, so I know how it feels. And she replied with, I'm the sole breadwinner in my family, and my husband has a terminal disease. I sincerely doubt that you know how it feels. Imagine how I felt then, having tried to empathize. To me, that was just the epitome of, oh my gosh, all these people were right. I am too sensitive. I shouldn't be empathizing because actually I don't know the whole picture. And it really made me question myself even more, and how I was using that empathy. But actually, I mean, she was right. I didn't know how that felt. I didn't know the whole picture. But then she said, the fact that you are trying to empathize with how I feel and understand my perspective means so much, and it makes this process so much easier. So thank you, is what she said. And from that very difficult moment, actually, our discussions after that point were far easier than they were with many other people that didn't have that sort of particularly difficult background or perspective. So so that was I remember very distinctly being in that room with that lady at that time. And I think that taught me two things. As I mentioned, never assume that you know the full picture when you are empathizing.
True.
We see it and hear it all the time, that people are fighting battles that we don't see. So you just don't necessarily know what's going on for people, and what is the full picture. But the second one that I think is most pertinent to this is that I realised empathy and dealing sensitively with the situation can make a hugely positive difference to somebody. If I had been the kind of person who had just shut off from that, I think we would have had very difficult conversations. It would have been more difficult for her, and I think it would have been more difficult for the business at the end of the day. And in this particular case, it actually made the business's role easier when we were having the conversations with that person. So it was possible, I realised, to be effective, not just in spite of my empathy and sensitivity, but actually as a direct result of those things. So I think for me, it just goes to show that, the bosses that I've had that have told me that I'm too sensitive and too emotional, they're too sensitive is somebody else's thank goodness Nicky understands. Thank goodness
Right.
she was sympathetic. You know, I've had feedback that I made a truly horrible experience feel, you know, a lot more fair and dignified because I understood. And feedback that my depth of understanding has helped the business get to a point of compromise that they never thought they'd get to, they never thought they'd reach. So, you know, my sensitivity and that empathy, especially I think in the roles that I've had and some of those really difficult conversations, have helped me enormously to have success. I have to caveat it with it's not always a strength. It can be, like all of these things, they all have a double-edged, they're all a double-edged sword, right? So it can be a challenge sometimes when I feel I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders because I'm taking on everybody else's thoughts and situations and problems and challenges. It can also be a challenge as well when I empathise with somebody else's point of view that's different from mine, and I don't feel they're empathising with mine. So I feel a bit shortchanged, if I'm honest. So that can be a challenge. But in general, I think it feels like, you know, a real strength to understand and to try to see someone else's perspective or feel their pain. I'd also say it's not an excuse, like any of these things, any of our character traits. Seeing something as a potential strength is never an excuse to sort of overindulge in it. So, you know, we can't simply say that our too much is our superpower and therefore it just goes unchecked. It's not carte blanche, you know, to cry in the office all the time or react sensitively to something. But, you know, in all honesty, when I realised that, it felt really liberating to not just stop chastising myself for my emotions, my empathy, my sensitivity, but also actually to acknowledge that they are actually beneficial to other people. And, you know, as you mentioned at the beginning, I've now even really created a business out of those strengths, because, you know, it's understanding the challenges of the working mum and helping them through my information, my advice and my coaching. Just feels so rewarding to be able to give back from that perspective.
That's great. That's great. And I think a lot of women, I know I struggled with that too, being not necessarily a crier all the time, but I do take things, my love language is words of affirmation for sure. And so a criticism or even, you know, there is actual criticisms versus, you know, constructive coaching and feedback. I actually had that conversation very recently over, it's like the person said at the time, my boss, I'm just coaching you. No, you're really not. You're just really
and
listing off a bunch of,
to me, that's
like,
an excuse.
That's not coaching.
No.
We have a different definition of that.
Yes.
I wasn't crying at that. However, I was angry. Because of other things. But anyway, but being in tune to other people is a superpower, especially during this crazy world that we live in right now. Just everything is just seems so skewed. Just everything. Just everything seems like it's all, I don't know, in the twilight zone.
Yes.
And so I really think that is a big piece of what I am either seeing more of because I'm recognizing it myself. You know, once you kind of put things out there, you see more and more and more of it when your heart is open to that. That more and more women are finding their voice, and part of their voice is, you know what? It's okay for me to be nurturing. It's okay for me to care. It's okay for me to be sensitive to the other person, especially if we don't agree with them. I have my oldest daughter and I are not on the same plane politically, but I appreciate that she is very passionate about the things that she's passionate about. I applaud her for the things that she, you know, is standing up for her generation and the things that she thinks are important. I do wish she had a little empathy back. As you said, I wish it was reciprocated. But I think we're getting there. Because the more you like, you know, the more we have these kind of conversations, and the more people say, you know what? So someone listening right now can go, you know what? I like that. I'm okay. I'm okay. Can be my superpower. I don't have to, it's okay. It's okay that I'm created that way.
Exactly. And I think, like I say, it just felt so liberating for me to stop sort of squashing it down and pretending it was making me inferior, I think is sort of how it felt, that I was, because it was too much for somebody else. And I guess, I'm presuming that there are lots of women and girls out there who are being told or feeling that they're too sensitive or overly emotional or whatever it might be. And I just probably encourage them to just pause and ask, too sensitive for whom?
Right.
There is no measure to say, oh, you're, high on the scale or low on the scale specifically. So, too sensitive or too emotional actually just means it's too much for that particular person. And they may be right, they may be wrong, but, it could be for all sorts of reasons. And like I say, check it, because if it becomes unhealthy for you to be overly sensitive, then that's no use to anybody, particularly yourself, because it can be unhealthy. But I think it is becoming, as you mentioned, I think it's becoming more of a movement. I think that a lot more of my female friends have got their own businesses, for example, and I think women are realizing that we can do that, and that's amazing. And I'm seeing a lot more and hearing a lot more that women largely are recognizing that actually their sensitivity is a strength, and not a weakness or making them inferior like they've been told before. And I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt once said that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So I'm learning, and I'm still learning. I'm still on that path to stop giving people my consent to make me feel inferior.
I've had people, because the opposite side of that is that I have a tendency to not always check my words, because I'm in tune to what is going on with the other person, and it catches them off guard. And if someone tells me, well, that made me feel bad, or that, I'm like, you're giving me way too much power. If you allow my words to say, that, don't. So on the other side too is, don't give that person so much power over your,
yes,
it can still sting, but like you said, just put it in check.
Exactly.
So I think also I interviewed this young man not too long ago, and he was very sensitive and very not shy, but quiet, and all the skills in the world. I just thought he was a fabulous person. But when he went on to the next level, not even the next level, but the next level, they didn't hire him because he didn't fit their image of what this young man should be. And it was like, I think you really missed a huge boat. So I was just thinking of the men who are sensitive and don't fit a certain mold, as well.
Ways, sorry to interrupt you. I think in some ways that's probably even harder in a way, because for women, I guess there's an assumption more that we will be more sensitive. I think it's just addressing the piece that's an inferior thing, or it's a negative that we have that. But for men who are particularly sensitive, I think it must be even harder, because that's not the expectation of a man. In society.
Seeing it as a negative. I mean, that's what I'm saying. For anyone,
exactly.
For either gender, it's not a negative. It's it's a piece of how that person is created, and all those things are used as a balance. We can't all be exactly the same.
No, the world would be very, very boring. Yeah,
it'd be very boring.
It would.
I lost my train of thought, but okay. So tell me a little bit more about this work that you're doing as well, with helping women understand what you said, clarity. So what does that mean?
So the clarity piece is largely for the UK audience, because it's clarity on working rights, which I can only address from a UK perspective. I'm not yet familiar enough with maternity laws all over the world to know, but it's just so many. It essentially came from conversations with my friends who were having babies at the same time as I had George, so three years ago. And when they were looking to go back to work, and, you know, as a reminder for your global audience, it's we have up to a year here in the UK.
Wow.
Which obviously is, you know, a huge blessing. We get all of that time. But at the same time, when you go back, it's a really long time to go back from. So when my friends were looking to go back to work and looking to apply for flexible working, or, you know, wondering when to go back, etc., I just realized that my inherent knowledge from working in, you know, human resources for so long was a huge advantage, and that I knew a lot about their rights that they didn't know. And that's not necessarily because they had a really poor HR department. It's just, you know, this stuff is really confusing. I think maternity law, certainly here in the UK and probably some of the other European countries, is incredibly confusing. So I just thought, well, you know, let me help them, my immediate friends. And then I thought, well, actually, you know, there must be so many people, women there, who are in the same boat. So it's just things such as, you know, what are your rights in terms of entitlement to how much leave you have. It's up to a year, but, you know, there are rules around when you can leave, when you can go on leave, when you can come back, when you have to go on leave, etc. Different rules around how much pay you're entitled to, you know, accruing annual leave while you're off. And then, of course, when you go to return, rules around which job you're entitled to return to, for example, and, you know, women who apply for flexible working arrangements so that they can balance childcare and work. There's a lot of legislation around that, and timeframes and things like that. So that was the clarity piece, really, and that's where that came from. So at the moment, I'm doing webinars for women on planning their maternity leave, so that they can, you know, spend more time looking at, you know, which travel system or logistics system or whatever they call a pram these days, to buy and keep baby clothes and things like that, without having to worry about, you know, what they can do, because I can hopefully take all of that confusion out of it for them. So it's webinars, coaching, one-to-one or group coaching, and then also I'm creating some online information resources as well, so fact sheets and things like that that people can refer to. So
that's great.
That's the clarity piece. And then the confidence is, you know, as I said, just going back after, you know, A, a long time, and B, after your life has completely changed because you've now got a whole human being dependent on you. It's going to
be okay. They're going to be okay. Trust me.
Be okay.
I have grandchildren now, so I know they make it all the way through and do it again.
And here we go again. Yeah.
Here we go again.
But, you know, sort of going back into the workplace after that length of time, I mean, I find it difficult enough, or found it difficult enough. I don't have you know, an employed job anymore because I've got my own business, but I found it difficult enough going back after a week's holiday. You know, you forget your password and this doesn't work. And as you mentioned at the beginning in your own experiences, you know, things change while you're off as well. So the things you thought you knew and were expert in might not necessarily be relevant anymore. And especially after a year, as you know, on maternity leave, or even if people sort of have children quite quickly and don't go back in between, before you know it, it's 3 years you've been out.
Right.
You know, that's really hard from a confidence perspective, in terms of feeling relevant, in terms of feeling like anybody cares, in terms of feeling that you can do it. There's the guilt to deal with, and, you know, just deciding what's right. So, that's largely around, I mean, I'm going to be releasing some ebooks around that, but also the coaching piece is largely about confidence, and that can be applicable to, you know, any country, obviously, because I think it's the same challenge wherever you are in the world. So it's really just sort of trying to help people with, you know, through coaching and activities and preparation, to feel a lot more empowered to make a confident return to the workplace, instead of feeling they have to apologize for you know, whatever it is, apologize for being off, apologize for having to leave early, you know, whatever that might be. So
another very prevalent thing that women do is apologize for everything.
Yes, I definitely do.
Yes, it's like I still catch myself, and it's like, I have nothing to be sorry for.
I know. So true. So true.
Yeah. So anyway.
So that's sort of the whole package really, and it's just like I say, it's just so rewarding to be able to help my fellow mums with the knowledge that I have, and the experience that I have, just sort of try and help people to feel more comfortable and confident in their positions as working mums, instead of it feeling like this, constant sort of being torn and never feeling like you're the best mum or the best, colleague or employee. It's just trying to sort of marry those two things together and make that work.
Yeah. Well, your strength of being empathetic and that way that you are wired, the way that you are created, makes that piece just natural for you to say, you know what, here's this information that they need. And someone that didn't have that can provide that same information, but it's not going to come across the same way.
Yes. Yeah. That's
so those things that we consider to be, weaknesses really are how we're wired. I mean, I think as women, just becoming our authentic self and just kind of really recognizing these ways that we're created is a good thing. It's a necessary thing. It's a vital thing, and has been.
Exactly.
Has a little twist on the truth that we're less than because we feel these ways. This is actually how this all works together successful,ly, not just not dividing all the time.
Exactly. And I mean, one of the ironies for me is that these previous managers who used to tell me these things, they'd be the first people to ask me to step into a situation when they felt they needed my empathy and my sensitivity and understanding. So, it's like, oh, you'll never be successful, but actually we just need you to do this or have this difficult conversation. So, it does serve to show that, exactly as you say, it's just, we're all different, and it's about embracing the differences instead of, necessarily seeing them as something that's inferior or weak or anything like that. It's just different, and we need all of those parts of everybody to make the whole.
We do need all of those pieces. We need all those pieces from both genders and not be labeled into certain things. And so hopefully with all these voices rising up from the Me Too movement to things that I'm seeing in the Christian community and Muslim community and different communities, all rising up with women saying, you guys have messed this up and we would like to come in and fix it now. Thanks. Please step aside. We'll include you because we need you. We recognize we need you, even if you don't recognize that
if you haven't recognized that. Exactly.
I interviewed my first guy yesterday for a little snippet. I'm doing some little snippet interviews, little 1 or 2 minute ones. And that's one of the things he said is like recognizing that, when anybody ever calls home, they never call for dad. They always call for mom. Mom, okay, even if you answer the phone, it's like, well, I want to talk to you too. Yeah, well, I got to talk to mom. I need to talk to mom. Whatever it is, it's mom. She goes, and he said, he's surrounded with women in the workplace as well. And so he's like, so I'm, I guess I'm the, outlier because I appreciate everything that a woman brings to the table, including how they know all this stuff. Why do they know all this stuff? Anyway, they retain it differently than what men do. They're like, I don't know. Anyway, it was great I actually got to interview a guy. So it was great. He was feeling left out because I was interviewing some other people and he was like, oh, Gilbert, yes, of course I would. Okay, so after this interview, we're going to have a little placeholder that has your contact information, but how can people get in touch with you? I know you said eventually you'll do more global things, but for those that are listening in the UK, how can they get in touch with you? So
largely through my website. So it's, and I think the placeholder will have the details, but it's www.mummymojo.com. And through that, you can contact me, you can sign up to coaching sessions or download a maternity calendar or whatever it is that you'd like to do. I also have a page on Facebook as well for anybody that would like to have a look at that. So that's Mummy Mojo as well. Okay, great. So go check her out and find her. So I appreciate you so much coming on. I've enjoyed, I resonate. I love all these interviews that I've been doing because no matter where we are or what our, Enneagram is or whatever, I just, it's like, oh yeah, I'm like that too. I'm like, I don't know how many personalities I have, but apparently quite a few because I'm like, oh, I'm like that too.
I'm like
It's just
that too.
appreciating. It's just appreciating all the different
It's the
facets of our personality.
It's the empath in me. It's like, exactly, yes, of course, that's awesome. So you can find Nicky over at Mummy Mojo on Facebook as well as on her internet. I thank you so much for coming on today. So Becoming Truly Liberated was created not only for impact and to empower women, but also to support our nonprofit called Become. Become works with women who have aged out of foster care or have found themselves economically unstable. To find out more about them, you can find us on Facebook at Become Community. Our website is being updated, but there's more coming in Van Zandt County as well as Bexar County. So I thank you so much for joining us tonight. As always, I hope that God meets you exactly where you are and loves on you exactly as you need. Good night. This interview was brought to you by Becoming Truly Liberated. Join us today at Becoming Truly Liberated on Facebook. Created to guide a woman in understanding why her life, story, and voice are vital for such a time as this. Confident, empowered, valued, truly liberated.
Thanks for joining us tonight. What an amazing 7 weeks this has been. I've had the privilege of meeting and interviewing 13 amazing women and one man that have discussed this topic, lies women believe. There's no way I would have known when I started how wide the audience would have been in our beliefs, in our profession, even in our location. I've interviewed women from 5 U.S. states and women from South Africa, Pakistan, and London. It's just mind-blowing. I've decided that one interview per week will continue to pursue this topic of lies women believe, as well as other topics that will serve to support women and men in becoming truly liberated. So next week, we will also add interviews with women who are dreaming big, well beyond their capabilities and current knowledge to impact their communities. I invite you to reach out to me to nominate people to be interviewed, or maybe yourself, or to highlight, as well as to continue to join us in the conversation on Facebook at Becoming Truly Liberated. The idea of this podcast is directly related to building a community of mentors, personal and professional, for a nonprofit I founded a few years ago called Become. As we continue to build the mentor team called Become Women, we want to be sure we have begun the work in ourselves in being self-aware and whole before we bring our own baggage and biases into a relationship that really needs to be based on healing and on healthy boundaries. If you'd like to know more about the group and our training that is involved, please let me know. We have a team forming now in East Texas for Van Zandt County, and I also have a lot of connections across the great state of Texas about mentoring groups. I'm really looking forward to meeting more women as we walk hand in hand in becoming truly liberated. As always, my hope is that you allow God to meet you exactly where you are, and that He loves on you exactly as you need in your journey to becoming truly liberated.
For more information about Inspiration for Life International Internet Radio Network and this podcast, please visit www.inspiration4life.org.